stays ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Of all the drama, of all the controversy, of all the magic moments in Formula One in 2021, it comes down to this.
From leaving the sport after his current Red Bull deal expires, to feeling frustrated by the constant changes in the race format, Max Verstappen opens up about retiring from F1. He's one of, if not the fastest driver on the grid right now. Sure, he's got a rocket ship of a car under him, but he still has to be consistently good, right? Because his teammate, Sergio Perez, also has the same car, and he's nowhere near Max in terms of pace. The Dutchman's enjoying one of the most dominant spells in F1 history, winning race after race, and he's all but sealed his third consecutive world championship too. It's a dream scenario for any driver, because Max could legit go on to win 6 or 7 championships if he keeps this up. But even though most other drivers would kill to be in his position, Max is ready to leave his winning ways and quit F1. The Red Bull ace says he's not going to stick around for very long, and would like to leave when his current deal runs out. For context, Max signed a long-term contract with Red Bull a couple of years ago, and it expires at the end of 2028. So let's say he continues his period of dominance for another 5 years. That's 8 world championships in total, which would make him the most decorated F1 driver of all time. Sure, there's the new engine regulations that are going to give the other teams a chance, but as things stand right now, Max is clearly untouchable. Here's the thing though, success can sometimes make you jaded too, and that's visible in Max's body language too. Sure, he's happy that he's winning, but fans have noticed something strange about him, because he's definitely not as upbeat as he used to be. In fact, even former F1 champ Damon Hill also says that Max isn't having fun in the sport anymore, which is why he keeps throwing these little hints about his retirement. The thing is, Max isn't like Fernando Alonso or Lewis Hamilton, drivers who'd race their entire lives if they physically could. He says he's got other priorities outside of the sport too. He wants to spend more time with his family, or even get into some racing categories eventually. But obviously there's one very big reason why he doesn't want to stay in F1 for very long. The sport is just too demanding. You see, Formula One drivers don't just turn up on a race day, do 60 laps around a track, and go back home. There's so much more that needs to be done throughout a racing weekend. First, you've got to turn up on a Thursday and take care of all the media stuff, and then it's 3 relentless days of practice, qualifying, and the race, which can make you do hundreds of laps. I mean, that in and of itself is extremely demanding, both physically and mentally. But that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to a racing driver. Max says that traveling's probably the worst thing about being in F1, because there are way too many races on the calendar. Plus, a lot of them are double and triple headers, meaning you don't get any time between race weekends. So he says that sure, he's young and is able to endure this right now, but he doesn't want to travel 25 races a year and then go to the UK for sim work when he's in his 30s. Besides, even if there's no racing action, drivers still have other commitments like brand endorsement appearances and all that. So Max believes that it all gets too much at one point, and he doesn't want to spend so much time away from home during the year. Don't think the Dutchman's lost his passion for racing though, because he still has the same fire inside him. But again, it all comes down to the other things he has to do with the racing. He says that in an ideal world, he'd just turn up to a race weekend, get in the car, do a few laps, and leave. But that's just not possible in F1. This sport is so much more than just racing. It's about glamour, showing off, and making money. So Max thinks that by the time he turns 40, he'll be on a yacht having a drink and watching the races instead. Besides, I've already mentioned how he wants to do other things too, and that includes some other racing categories. In the past, Max has even hinted at endurance racing, but rallycross is something he's definitely gonna try. After all, his father Jos Verstappen also does rallies these days, so they'll make a nice father-son duo. Plus, there's another reason why he doesn't want to stay in F1 forever, because for him, the sport is a bit too risky. And sure, he can get through that right now, but at some point, his family and safety will take priority over everything else. Speaking of family though, Max is probably more of a family man than most people realize. He's said it in the past too, that he loves to spend time at home, and would even consider leaving the sport if it takes that family time away from him. Currently, he's dating Kelly Piquet, who's the daughter of 3-time F1 champ Nelson Piquet. Plus, Max is a stepdad to Kelly's daughter Penelope, and they've shared some very cute moments together too. So he's got a good thing going for him with those two, and they're always going to be his first priority. But obviously, there are so many other factors when it comes to a big decision like this that you can't really put it on one thing. Take Fernando Alonso's career, for example. Maxie says that while he's not going to race into his 40s like the Spaniard's doing, he still has a similar mindset to Nando. After all, when Alonso stopped winning and struggled in a horrendous McLaren car, he quit the sport and tried his luck in other categories like the World Endurance Championship. And that's where Max's head is at too, because he likes to be competitive and win things. So when you're not doing that every race, then it's hard to fully motivate yourself to keep going. And with the 2026 engine rules coming into play, who knows where Red Bull's gonna be? Maybe they totally fumble the bag and become a mid-table team? It's wild, but crazier things have happened in this sport. And if that happens, then there's no way Max extends his contract beyond 2028. Make no mistake, he's one of the poster boys for the sport, and F1 needs him as much as he needs F1. In fact, we've seen Formula One's management try to make Max the face of the sport. He's everywhere, in magazines, commercials, and billboards. Sure, he may not be as out there as someone like Lewis Hamilton, but in terms of being a great champion, there aren't many out there like him. And let's not forget, he's still super young and in his mid-20s.
I always knew already that Lewis was a great driver, but I never really had that full opportunity to race against him. And I think what was very special this year was that both of us, we pushed the car and the team to the limit, because we demanded a lot, but we also gave back a lot.
Despite winning the World Championship multiple times, he's the generational talent, and Formula One certainly wouldn't be the same without him. I mean, people would point toward other drivers like Charles Leclerc or Lando Norris, who, let's be fair, will carry the torch after Max. But are they as good as him right now? No way. Besides, it'd be a massive loss for F1 to let Max go because of little things like a busy race calendar. I'm not saying that the FIA and Liberty Media should just give in to the demands of a driver, but it's not like he's the only one having issues with their direction. And sure, F1 is expanding rapidly in other territories and there's more room for expansion, but what's the point if your drivers aren't invested anymore? In fact, one of the biggest reasons why Max wants to quit the sport is that they keep making unnecessary changes to the race format. Take the sprint weekend during the 2023 Azerbaijan Grand Prix, for example. The FIA tried to switch things up by dedicating Saturday to sprint quali and a sprint race, while the normal quali for Sunday's race happened on Friday. In theory, this plan had a lot of promise because it promised more action, but it all fell flat when the races turned out to be massive bore-fests. That's not the only time they've tried to experiment with new stuff, though, and Max thinks that these changes are just annoying. He says that while he understands that the FIA wants to make every day exciting, making things more intense and harder for the drivers is not the way to go. In fact, he says that if they keep up with these experiments and don't listen to what the drivers have to say, then he won't be around for too long. Max is simply not a fan of the sprint weekends and would rather have classic F1 racing with less than 20 races on the calendar. So there you have it. From feeling frustrated at the constant changes in the race format to leaving the sport after his current Red Bull deal expires, that's how Max Verstappen opened up about retiring from F1.